We've all felt it, that creeping sense of stagnation. It's not a sudden crash, it's a slow leak. The days begin to blur into a weary, grayscale loop. You wake up to the blue light of a phone, you commute in a metal box, you sit in a cubicle or at a home desk, and then you return to a quiet house to stare at a different screen until your eyes burn. Repeat, repeat, repeat. You aren't necessarily unhappy in the way people describe tragedy. There's no mounting drama, but you're heavy. You're carrying the invisible weight of a world that demands your constant productivity, your peak performance, and your immediate responses. Yet it gives back very little in the way of actual soul fuel. You are running on empty, and the low-fuel light has been blinking for months. When you live in this state, especially if you live alone, silence starts to change its texture. It stops being a peaceful sanctuary and starts becoming predatory. This isn't the quiet of a library, it's a vacuum. It's an active force that feeds on your overthinking. In that void, your brain does what it does best when it's bored and stressed. It hunts for trouble. It replays the anxieties of tomorrow's 9 a.m. meeting. Or it drags up a cringeworthy mistake you made 5 years ago that nobody else remembers. Then the door opens, or you look toward the corner of the room. Enter the four-legged disruptor. Suddenly, fine isn't the goal anymore. Joy is. A dog is the ultimate mindfulness master. Not because they've read the books, but because they are incapable of being anywhere else but now. They don't let you dwell in the graveyard of your past. They don't care about your student loans, your credit score, or that awkward thing you said to your boss 3 years ago. When a dog enters your home, that heavy silence is shattered by a symphony of life. It's the rhythmic click, click, click of paws on hardwood, a sound that acts as a heartbeat for the house. It says, "I am here and you are here, and that is enough." It's the deep, contented sigh they let out as they settle at your feet, a sound that vibrates through the floorboards and tells your nervous system to stand down. They turn your house from a box where you store your stress into a den, a sanctuary, a place where you are allowed to simply exist. Now, some might say this is just pet parent sentimentality. They'll tell you it's all in your head, but science tells a much more profound story. This isn't just a feeling, it's a chemical coup. Imagine the scene. You've had the worst Tuesday imaginable. Your car wouldn't start, your coffee spilled on your laptop, and your boss sent a "we need to talk" email. You walk through the front door and your jaw is so tight it hurts. Your shoulders are hunched up to your ears like a defensive shield. You are a walking ball of cortisol, the body's alarm system. But then you sit on the floor. You look into those big, soulful, unblinking eyes. In that moment, your brain performs a biological miracle. It begins to flood your system with oxytocin. This is the love hormone, the exact same chemical messenger that creates the unbreakable bond between a parent and a newborn child. It is nature's most powerful glue. As you reach out to stroke those velvet ears, something happens under the surface. Your cortisol levels, the very chemicals making you feel hunted and panicked, begin to plummet. Your heart rate, which has been racing since 8 a.m., suddenly finds a slower, steadier, more human rhythm. Your blood pressure dips. Your dog doesn't see a failure, a stressed employee, or someone who didn't hit their targets. They see their entire world. They see a deity who happens to be very good at ear scratches. You think you're just petting the dog, but you're actually performing a biological reset. You are co-regulating with another living being. They are living, breathing healers who ask for nothing in return but a bit of kibble and the simple privilege of being in your orbit. They are the only creatures on Earth who love you more than they love themselves. Let's look at the before person. Imagine a rainy Saturday morning. For the before person, that rain is an excuse to stay under the covers until noon. They might be paralyzed by the "what's the point" of it all, spiraling into a YouTube rabbit hole of doom scrolling or watching other people live their lives while theirs sits on pause. The room stays dark, the air gets stale, and the isolation deepens. The after person doesn't have that luxury. A dog is a biological alarm clock with a wet nose and zero respect for your desire to sulk. They don't care if it's raining. They don't care if you're tired. They have needs, and those needs become your mission. They force you into a rhythm. They demand that you lace up those sneakers, grab the leash, and step out into the world. And something magical happens when you cross that threshold. Suddenly, you aren't just reading about the weather on an app. You're feeling the mist on your face. You're seeing the way the sunrise bleeds through the clouds. You're noticing the subtle shift in the seasons, the way the light hits the oak trees in October versus the sharp, bright clarity of May. This forced movement is a secret weapon against the fog of burnout and depression. It gives you a why that exists entirely outside of yourself. On the days when you wouldn't get out of bed for your own sake, you get out of bed for theirs. You aren't just walking for your health anymore. You're walking for that wagging tail. And in the beautiful accident of taking care of them, you start taking care of the person you forgot mattered. You. You're getting the sunlight, the steps, and the fresh air you didn't know you were starving for. In your before life, you were an island. We've become a society of islands. You walk down the street with noise-canceling headphones on, eyes glued to the gray pavement, desperately avoiding the friction of human contact. We are more connected than ever digitally, and more isolated than ever physically. But try walking a golden retriever or a scruffy, energetic terrier through a public park without someone cracking a smile. It is almost impossible. Dogs are the world's greatest icebreakers. They are the social glue that keeps a lonely world from falling apart. They turn strangers into neighbors. They strip away the titles and the social anxiety. People don't ask you about your job title or your political leanings. They ask, "What's his name?" Or, "Can I give her a pat?" Suddenly, the isolation that felt like a permanent fog begins to lift. You aren't just another anonymous, rushing face in the city anymore. You're Buster's human. You have an identity tied to something pure, something friendly, and something that reminds everyone you meet that there is still goodness in the world. You start to realize that the world isn't as cold as your before brain told you it was. It's full of people who also just want to connect, and your dog is the bridge that gets you there. Perhaps the deepest change happens where no one else can see it, in the quiet moments within your own mind. We humans are experts at holding grudges. We are historians of our own failures. We carry our embarrassments and our regrets like heavy stones in our pockets, weighing us down with every step. But watch a dog. They trip over their own paws while chasing a ball, look absolutely ridiculous for a second, and then they move on instantly. They don't have an ego to protect. They don't have a reputation to maintain. They forgive you the very second you walk through the door, even if you were gone 2 hours longer than you planned. They don't care if you're wearing an expensive suit or the same coffee-stained sweatpants you've worn for 3 days. They don't judge your lack of progress. They don't care if you haven't cleaned the kitchen. They teach us the art of radical forgiveness. They show us, through every wag and every leaning snuggle, that it's okay to be imperfect. They teach us that the most important moment in the history of the entire universe is the one happening right now, the one where you are together. They teach us that we are worthy of love, not because of what we do, but simply because of who we are. So, if you're sitting in that stagnant before today, if you feel like the silence is getting too loud, know that there is a version of your life waiting for you. It's a life that's a little messier, for sure. It's a life that's definitely more covered in fur and probably involves a few chewed-up shoes. It's a life that is significantly louder and more unpredictable. But it's also a life where you never have to face the silence alone again. Because having a dog doesn't just change your daily schedule. It doesn't just give you a hobby. It changes the way you see the world, the way you see others, and most importantly, the way you see yourself. It doesn't just change your routine. It changes your soul.